Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here with Archaon, Lord of the End Times, going to be taking the Warriors of Chaos up against the Vampires. So this is similar to a build I saw on Turin's channel. Recently he published a build with Archaon using some Chosen with halberds, so I've gone for a similar build here with a few modifications. So we've got, of course, Archaon the Everchosen here, Lord of the End Times. Let's take a look at his loadout. He does have his item, the Slayer of Kings. So this is a massive weapon damage debuff, gives him 60% weapon and armor piercing, plus 32% splash attack power. If you pop this, his total weapon strength goes up to about 808, I believe, if the Frenzy is active. Just absolutely monstrous. He can really put a beating on pretty much anyone while that's active. Definitely makes Archaon a much stronger single combat lord. In addition, he also has access to the Lore of Fire, which is very good against the vampires, so we've got Flaming Sword of Ruin here for that magical and fire damage imbuement, as well as the Burning Head for some crowd control, you know, clearing out the chaff, as it were. We've also got Foe Seeker and Standard or Die, of course. In addition, we've also got a Giant and a Shaggoth for two monstrous units. The vampires generally have a hard time dealing with large monstrous units, so the Giant and Shaggoth are both very good here. They do play a bit of a different role. The Giant is more of an anchor. It's a bit slower, doesn't have a lot of armor, but 550 weapon strength is massive. 65 melee attack as well. It doesn't move around very fast, but it acts as a very great anchor for, you know, your other units to kind of fall back to. The Shaggoth is a little bit more aggressive. Obviously, he's much faster at 76 speed, 70 armor, and 460 weapon strength with a 30 bonus versus large and a 62 charge bonus, so much more aggressively focused. The Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is really meant to, in this matchup, hunt down enemy lords, mortis engines, other high-value targets, and kind of be, I guess, a linebacker. For those of you who know American football, he's kind of the guy who moves to the point of attack and just kind of follows aggressively and, you know, gets on those high-value targets. Then for infantry, we've got a front line of two Chosen with halberds here in the center and a Chaos Warrior with halberd on each flank, just downgraded to the Chaos Warriors with halberds out on the flanks, save on a bit of funds. Chosen with halberds are, of course, much better in Mortal Empires. Elite tier halberds in general in Game 2 are very, very good. Chosen with halberds are no exception. They've been significantly buffed. They have massive armor piercing and a bonus versus large of 26, which is absolutely huge. 54 melee defense and 120 armor, as well as very strong leadership, makes these guys very, very good. The overall nerfs to Terror have in Game 2, I'm not sure of exactly the numbers, but it feels like Terror has been nerfed slightly so that it takes hold at a slightly lower threshold. And as well, Chosen just have such high base leadership that it's pretty hard for them to get terrified away as long as your leadership units are still alive. That's pretty much it for the build, besides, of course, Sirtha X buddies here, the Marauder Horsemen, one regular Marauder Horseman and two Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes for some nice armor-piercing missile support. With their fast, they're mobile, they can get around the battlefield and move away from opposing threats, so they're very hard to pin down with vampires and so on. Or vampires, zombie summons, and so on. Of course, armor piercing is great against things like the Red Duke here, or that Mortis engine, or other high-value armored targets. The Marauder Horsemen with the regular javelins will be good against things like Crypt Horrors and other low-armor targets, so definitely both have good utility here. For my opponent's army, he does have the Red Duke up on the Hellsteed, and I quite like the Red Duke in this guise. He's a very, very strong duelist with Elsif and other abilities, and on the Hellsteed, he's wickedly fast. If you use Dance Macabre, it makes him even faster and gives him a melee attack buff. Plus, you can then use Elsif and Curse of Years to debuff your opponent's speed, and he can pretty much catch anyone. So, very strong pick. And, you know, of course, he's a great utility in general. He does have the Sword of Anti-Heroes as well in this guise for some additional, you know, duelist power, as well as the Charm Shield for that damage resistance. Let's look at his other spells. Looks like he's got Winds of Death, Curse of Years, Raise Dead, Dance Macabre, and Invocation of the Hex. So lots of spells, but honestly, all those spells are going to be useful. So it is very expensive, but, you know, may potentially be worth it. My opponent's main line is very much kind of quote-unquote meta, at least what it used to be meta, vampire frontline. He's got Skeleton Warriors with Graveguard mixed in. He's got a Mortis engine, 2 White Kings, which is not really a meta pick. I'm honestly not a huge fan of White Kings. They are very, very tanky, can act as a good anchor, but they're just not going to do a whole lot of damage. He also does have these 3 units of Crypt Horrors, who of course are very strong units, regeneration, poison attacks. They also got a bump in their entity models, as all monstrous infantry did in Mortal Empires, so it's, they're pretty good. But let's go ahead and get this show on the road. It's going to be a fast and brutal battle, but let's get things started. So you can see I charged out my Shaggoth to meet this White King, since he's a bit out of position here. So we're going to be chasing them back and maybe getting a couple attacks on these Crypt Horrors. Nope, looks like we're pulling back there. Meanwhile, Crypt Horrors charging straight into the front of Chosen with Halberds. I mean, they will do some damage, but the Chosen with Halberds have charge defense against large, and of course have heavy armor-piercing anti-large weapon strength. You can already see they're putting an absolute beating on those Crypt Horrors there. Over here, this White King has taken a massive smacking from the Chaos Giant here. Chaos Warriors with Halberds holding out very, very well. They, of course, have heavy armor and nice combat stats as well. Nice armor-piercing anti-large, and 38 melee defense is pretty decent. Meanwhile, the Grave Guard and other units are coming in. We've also got the Marauder Horsemen parked up around the back here. They're going to be firing into this Mortis engine, and it really doesn't have a good place to go. If it comes over into this area, I'm going to be able to get on it with the Shaggoth. If it comes over to this side of the battlefield, it's got the Giant to worry about. And of course, the Marauder Horsemen here in the back can pretty much move wherever to pressure, so it's going to be very, very hard for the Mortis engine to find a safe place in the battle here, and it's going to be very advantageous for me. Looks like we're going to be dropping a beautiful Burning Head here, so let's see an absolutely brutal, just roasting hordes of skeletons here. Giant laying an absolute smackdown as well, and Archaon's really, really nice here. The changes to Burning Head honestly make it one of my favorite win spells right now. You can see he's racked up 61 kills. He hasn't honestly been doing a whole lot of combat, but that Burning Head just roasted tons of skeletons. Great for clearing out fodder units. You can see this unit of skeletons and this one both already set to crumbling. The White King as well is very, very low on leadership and health, and Archaon can kind of just crisscross across the lines here. He's going to be really hard to catch for my opponent because he didn't bring any really high mass units. The Mortis engine's crumbling currently, trying desperately to force through the lines here and get onto the other side. This unit of Chaos Warriors is inundated by skeletons on one side and zombies on the other, but they're they're going to be able to hold out here. The Mortis engine does go down. These guys, though surrounded, will be able to hold their leadership together now that that terror is gone. Chosen with Halberds, I mean, really nothing here is going to be able to challenge them. Even the armor piercing from the Crypt Horrors right now is being used on the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, which granted is a very large threat. However, my opponent just really doesn't have the armor piercing or combat stats to cut through this here. We've just dropped another Flaming Sword of Ruin as well, so all these guys are going to be catching that fire damage. I believe it's also imbuing flaming missile damage to all these guys, so they're firing into the back of these Crypt Horrors right now, doing some really, really nice work. Giant over here just cleaning up shop, racked up 41 kills so far on climbing, and honestly these Chaos Warriors and the Chosen with Halberds really are not going to be challenged at all by anything my opponent's brought here at this point. So it's, yeah, you can see the balance of power is already starting to tilt in my favor. The Red Duke is down here in combat trying desperately to take down this Shaggoth, and they have about worked it down. But it's already racked up 2 XP chevrons regardless, and Archaon and the Giant are still very healthy, as well as all these Chosen with Halberds here, just continuing to valiantly hold the line for their ruinous powers here. So it is going to be victory for the forces of chaos. And well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this. We'll get some cinematic action here as the Shaggoth and Archaon administer the final beatdown here to the remainder of the vampire forces. And, you know, previously this was a matchup that was really, really tough for Chaos, but with the buffs they've gotten in Mortal Empires and just, you know, the changes all across the board to how different things work, Chaos is a lot stronger in this matchup, and I honestly think that they're an extremely tough matchup for the vampires to take on right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the army breakdown so we can kind of talk about some things. So for myself, a very small elite army, which is not something I typically go with, but the Chosen with Halberds are just so good in this matchup. Bringing a front line of them with those Chaos Warriors with Halberds, I mean, they were able to hold out, rack up a ton of kills, and get some really great value. Really weren't challenged at all by anything my opponent brought here. Marauder Horsemen as well, paying off dividends, taking down that Mortis engine. Of course, the Shaggoth racked up 3 XP chevrons hunting down high-value targets, and 53 kills, no XP chevrons on the Giant, but, you know, he did his job in being the anchor point there. 63 kills on Archaon himself. So against the prototypical quote-unquote meta army from the last game, definitely Chaos is in a lot better place. And I would say because of Shaggoths, because of the Chosen with halberds and Lore of Fire, makes Chaos really hard to deal with for the vampires. Let's go ahead and take a look at the matchup a little bit further and just kind of talk about some things. So if we go in here to Custom Battle, so we'll switch these guys over to the Warriors of Chaos and the Vampires here. So yeah, Chosen with Halberds are really, really strong in this matchup. They're just really tanky. Charge defense against large. All their stats make them very tough to deal with for the Vampire counts. The only unit you can have that can really deal with them is potentially Graveguard with great weapons. But if we compare their stats side by side, you can see Graveguard with great weapons get outclassed by Chosen with Halberds in every way, even weapon strength. So you're really going to have to use like Dance Macabre and lots of healing for these guys to be able to take down Chosen with Halberds. Beyond that, I mean, Fate of Buna could work if you were to bring a Manfred or another Deathcaster with Fate of Buna. Obviously, that's going to tear through a unit of Chosen with Halberds. Or if you can get a good Wind of Death. My opponent had Wind of Death. If he had been able to cast it because we engaged in a straight line, if he had been able to cast and overcast Winds of Death right down the line, it would have pretty much killed all of my Chosen with Halberds. So that's a potential danger as well. It's something to think about when you're deploying your Chosen. You may want to stagger their deployment somewhat so you don't get caught out by something like Winds of Death. In terms of other things, Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma can help as well, but Lore of Shadows is not something you typically want to take here, just because usually as a Vampire Counts player, you want to dedicate most of your magic into Invocation of the Heck and healing. That's really where you're going to get the most value. So it's hard to say. Let's see, what else here? Sternsmen are potentially good in this matchup just because they have regeneration, but again, anything with this basic regeneration trait is going to take a ton of damage from fire, and so Flaming Sword of Ruin is a real threat when you're fighting the Warriors of Chaos as the Vampires. Of course, ethereal units as well. Flaming Sword of Ruin gives magic damage, so ethereal units are pretty much a bust against Chaos as well. The Crypt Horrors they're good. They have armor piercing and poison. They can definitely dish out a lot of damage against regular Chaos infantry, but Chaos Warriors with Halberds and Chosen with Halberds are going to be very tough for them to deal with. The Black Coach can potentially be good here, although it can get bogged down by things like Chaos Knights. Of course, Blood Knights are an excellent pick here. They're going to be able to do a ton of shock damage with their massive charge bonus. Anti-large bonus will be good against things like Giants and Shaggoths. They are very expensive, though, so that is a bit of a risk. Varix Reavers are a unit that I like in almost any matchup. Of course, they're going to struggle against something like Chaos Warriors with Halberds, but if you can pin down the Chaos Warriors with something like Skeleton Warriors and get repeated cycle rear charges, you can definitely do a lot of damage with something like the Varix Reavers or Blood Knights, even on armored anti-large infantry. Something they're not really designed to counter. You can get a lot of damage done if you have the right units to, you know, keep them pinned down and so on. Vargulfs can potentially be good here again, though. They're going to be dangerous because, or they're going to be in danger rather, because of that regeneration. Same thing with the Terrorgeist. It also has that basic regeneration trait. So anything with that trait is going to take a ton of damage. Mortis Engine also has it, as well as the Corpse Carts, so you really have to watch out for what units do have that basic regeneration trait and what units don't. The issue is that a lot of the units that do have the regeneration trait are some of the more useful and cost-effective units on the Vampire Counts roster, so it really makes it tough, you know, coming up against something like the Warriors of Chaos with a couple Chosen with Halberds, Chaos Warriors with Halberds too, even by themselves. A little bit easier to deal with, but they're still quite formidable. Forsaken can be great for clearing out fodder, or, you know, the Marauder Horsemen as well. Hounds can catch them. Let's see, these guys have 90 speed, and I believe Hounds have 95 or close to there. Yeah, 95, so the Hounds can catch them. But, you know, if you're able to counter with other units and keep your Marauder Horsemen safe, they can be absolutely critical in the late stages of a battle. Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoths are, of course, very good here, as well as Giants. It's a really tough matchup for Vampire Counts, honestly. Let me know what you guys think, but what build would you bring as the Vampire Counts to counter something like the Chosen Halberd build? If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.